Item C, 1, reporting on action taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session. Item D, the regular session, 5 o'clock, sorry about that, 5:10. Okay. Now, public comments, and these public comments are for anything that is not an agenda-sized item, okay? I want to remind everybody that each speaker has 3 minutes. The clock is right there. Podium is here, and please try to adhere to the 3 minutes, and we'll go from there. Okay? So first up, Mary Conway, vaping. Where's Mary? Hi, Mary.
Good evening, board members and staff. I'm Mary Conway, and I am the Valley Youth Coalition Director for the prevention efforts that are happening here in the Valley. And I wanted to let the board members know that we were here yesterday in the library with a workshop. It was the Public Health Department, Don and myself, presented a vaping workshop for our teachers during their in-service day, and I believe what came out of that was very good. We've got some great ideas that the teachers have brainstormed. I do want to bring to the attention of our board members and administrators, as well as our audience here, that we have examined the new California Healthy Kids Survey data. And we've, to our astonishment, for the first time ever, have seen a new drug emerge. In the past, it's always been alcohol for probably generations as the #1 drug of choice for our young people. And with the information we've gathered from the kids that anonymously reported, we now have vaping as a #1 drug of choice. Now, vaping is not a drug, it's a device, but what they're vaping and what they're thinking is that they're using nicotine at very high and alarming milligrams, as well as other drugs, mostly marijuana at this point. And so we really do have an epidemic here at our school, and I will mention that, unfortunately, our school is vaping at a higher rate than any other school in our Santa Barbara County. So it's good that we're aware, and I would ask that the board would be supportive of the prevention efforts that have been mentioned by our school teachers. They have some great ideas on how they can improve the situation so that we don't have it's an epidemic right now, but we need to really work hard as a community, as schools, as parents, and as teens to really grab this by the horns and start reversing those trends. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support, and have always enjoyed being a partner here at the high school.
Thank you, Mary.
Mary, before you sit down, you said that the faculty shared with you ideas that they had for tackling the problem. Will you be committing that to writing and distributing it to us?
We are, actually, Dawn Dunn is putting the list together. She worked hard with Peter Haas, who brought this forward for us, and the list of things are going to be brought back to Peter.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
I've also invited Mary to be a part of our April meeting to share the California Healthy Kids Survey information, and also some of the things that we talked about with staff as well.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Julie Kennedy. This is regarding Olive Grove. I have a... You can speak during the public hearing if you wish. Okay, I'll reshuffle. Thank you. I only read what's on the card. Thank you. Leanne McNulty, CT in Allen Hancock College. Leanne? Pardon?
And I want to make sure that, I'm not representing Allen Hancock College. I'm representing a member of our community. and a CTE proponent. And I just wanted to let you know, if you need any help writing grants, there's a lot of research on the value of career technical education and those pathways, and how they propel students not only into excellent careers. The hands-on learning is amazing. It's how people learn best, is by doing, and those programs promote that in everything. It's not the old folk ed. And I wrote many grants for Santa Ynez Union High School District. So I'm speaking on the behalf of the fact that I could help your district find those grants, go for those funding sources, and some of those grants and funding sources have become annual funding sources that are repeatedly continue to be renewed. So I just wanted to offer that, and also maybe some suggestions for bonds. I know people hate to hear about taxes, but public school is a great place to create a bond, and so it could help with anything like that.
Thank you.
Did I receive an email from you?
My sister sent an email, who's a parent here. I went to school here. My sister went to school. Mr. Popian is my dad.
That's right.
Got it.
So I care very much about the success of this school and your
Of course.
programs. I also care very much for our community, and have for the last 26 years written grants for public schools, pro bono for the most part. So, but I'm currently working at Allen Hancock College as their director of institutional grants, and I just see that as a possible revenue. But please know I don't speak on behalf of the college, because I haven't gotten permission to do that in this case.
Can I get your contact information before you leave? That would be
Absolutely,
great.
I'll give you my card.
Super. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Item 6, reports and presentations. Mr. Swanitz?
Yes, thank you.
Mark. So normally I begin my report with yielding some time to Viviana Sevilla, who is our board rep, but she was unable to be here at the new time. So she sent me a couple comments for you. She says, we are currently holding auditions for Raw Talent, which will be a fundraiser for the Music Boosters being held at the Vets Hall on March 30th. ASB will also be conducting tours and hosting the club fair at Open House. Planning has begun for prom on May 11th, and ASB is currently working on an event order with the Alisal River Grill. As for my report, I want to mention the third quarter ends this Friday. It's hard to believe that we're just heading into the final stretches of the school year. It seems like we really just got started. That means we're entering the fourth quarter, and that means testing. So we will be gearing up to administer the battery of CASP tests that includes math tests, English tests, and the new California science test. Juniors are tested in math and English, and these are, by the way, all computer adaptive tests. Juniors are tested in math and English, and this year, in order to move the CAST, California Science Test, to the junior year, we had to test both the juniors and seniors. And so we finished testing the seniors, and the juniors are yet to come. The testing for the juniors will begin later this month, and continue into April. And then as soon as we finish all of that testing, we will roll right into AP testing that follows immediately thereafter on May 6th. Want to report also that this month we found our perfect test case for our restorative approaches, restorative circles. And that's an alternative to traditional discipline that we trained 19 facilitators in last spring. And we wanted to be sure that we had a case which would be successful and result in a positive outcome. Therefore, we picked carefully. I wanted to let you know that Melanie Dickey, who co-facilitated the first circle with Patrick Shattuck, wrote this in an email to the steering committee. Patrick and I had a great experience with the restorative justice circle today. The kids were thoughtful and respectful, and the parents were model adults. They truly cared more about helping the person of concern develop as a young man than anything else. I can't speak enough praise for the two of them. And we are excited about the prospects of finding other ways to use restorative circles and deploy our 19 facilitators to run these things on a more regular basis. We consider it a fundamental element also of the multi-tiered systems of support program that Stephanie Gagonis is going to be helping us develop. And for that reason, she's sort of stepped up to be our restorative approaches coordinator in helping us keep those circles set up. Next Tuesday, March 19th, I will host the third and final parent ambassador meeting with this year's cohort of parent ambassadors, and I will follow that up on April 12th after spring break with my third and final meeting with this year's Student Senate. I did want to tell you a little bit more about yesterday's professional development with PHP and County Public Health. I'll try to limit my remarks to things that Mary didn't say already. There were three components to yesterday's training. The first was an overview of vaping and the medical concerns that we have with it that was presented by Dawn Dunn of County Public Health. Very insightful. I was particularly taken, I think, by her reference that everybody who is currently vaping in society now are lab rats, and we will find out in 20 years how dangerous vaping is when there's a history of medical research on them. Mary brought several displays of actual vaping devices for the teachers to examine firsthand, and she shared some alarming statistics that she shared with you tonight. And she will be giving those to you at a future meeting. And then Peter walked the faculty through some good discussions about how we can work together to bring vaping to heal here at Santa Ynez High School. So I want to thank all three of them for putting on an excellent professional development for our staff. I think the more eyes we have on this problem, the more knowledge that we have about it as an institution, the better. I'll have the opportunity to remind you of this at next month's meeting, but I did want to mention that the next and final Principal's Coffee of the Year will be held on Friday, April 26th. And I wanted to also let you know that on March 1st, at the last Principal's Coffee, I had the largest turnout of any Principal's Coffee yet. There were roughly 10 parents that showed up. And we had a good discussion about Olive Grove and school funding in general. Two last things. One is that we are being told by the College Board that there are changes coming to the curricula of some of our AP courses beginning next year. So we're in the process of getting those teachers who have not yet been trained registered for summer professional development programs so they can be prepared for those changes. And last but not least, I'm very proud to report that math teacher Ashley Coelho has been selected as a finalist for the 2019 Santa Barbara County Teacher of the Year. A committee of five members will now visit and watch her teach and then interview her and 4 other candidates before announcing the winner of this year's award. This is a process with which our own Mrs. Babcock is familiar, having been the 2001 Santa Barbara County Teacher of the Year. And we're proud of Ashley, and we wish her the best luck. And that's my report, unless you have questions.
Superintendent Corey, anything?
No, I can see my time for the public hearing.
Okay, great. So let's move on to E, which is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Second. We have a motion to approve in a second. Is there any discussion? Consent agenda items? All right, Laura, roll call. Aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, let's go on to item F, which is the action agenda. And first up, this is, let's see here, public hearing regarding waiver of Education Code Section 47635, 47632, 47663, and 47605, and the corresponding regulations. Superintendent Corey.
All right, if I get the board turn around and face the screen. So, everybody ready? Okay. So we need to have a public hearing regarding 2 courses of action that I'm asking the board to take this evening regarding 2 specific resolutions related to our Olive Grove charter situation. So the presentation that I have for you this evening is way more information than is needed for this particular setting, but it is a form of documentation for those that may want to know more about this process. You'll see a lot of alphabet soup in here about sponsoring LEAs and ILPTs and things along those lines, but it is important that we have this information housed all in one place. There are 2 associated resolutions on the agenda that you will see. And both of them talk specifically about our possible courses of action regarding Olive Grove Charter. We are in a full court press right now to both remediate the impacts of Olive Grove and the in lieu property tax payment for this year, as well as looking at a long-term solution starting next year and beyond. These two resolutions give us flexibility. There's actually 3 different things that we're pursuing. These 2 resolutions, and legislatively, you'll see that in a later slide, legislatively, our long-term solution is legislative. And so we're going to talk about all of those. But I will be seeking your approval of both of those resolutions, so I have both options available to me as our strategy develops leading towards May, when we will be attending the State Board of Education meeting. We'll need both of these options open to us as we move ahead. Okay? So a little bit about the timeline, and again, I won't read through all of this, but those of you that were on the board before know that in January of 2017, we received an initial petition to authorize, as a local education agency, Olive Grove Charter School. And 5 other districts in the county received petitions as well. Due to the quality of that petition and based on very specific ed code criteria, we denied that petition, as did all other districts that were also petitioned. They, following their due process rights, appealed to the County Office of Ed. County Office of Ed also denied. They submitted their petitions to the State Board for approval, and were not successful at that level. Fast forward to October of 2017, we received another petition that had been upgraded, if you will, and we reviewed that, found it still to not meet the criteria required by Ed Code, and we were able to, we're not able to, but we did deny that. They petitioned to the county. There were 4 districts this time, not 6. All 4 were denied by the county board as well, and they were successful this time at the State Board of Education level. So that's a little bit about that timeline there. This talks about the Ed Code that defines what happens if the state board authorizes a charter school and they do not designate a district as the authorizing district. What essentially this slide is saying is that if they opt not to designate, the first district that denied, which in this case was us, is responsible for those in lieu property tax payments. Okay? And that's what that actually means in this Ed Code reference is that that agency, that district that is now responsible for that district, even though the California Department of Ed is running it because it was a state board authorized charter, we are responsible for the payments associated with that, and that's what that reference is there. Okay. Again, the main, most salient points on this particular thing here, on this particular slide, is that we received a bill from an invoice, if you will, from the California Department of Ed stating in December 28 that we owed $696,000. These numbers are adjusted at several points during the school year as average daily attendance is recalculated, ending in the spring. If you listen to what the executive director has to say, it is her opinion that the in lieu property tax payment will be $1 million to $1.2 million. That amount of 1.2 represents approximately 10% of the district's operating budget. This is literally something that we cannot afford, and we need a full court press on right now to do right by our students.
That's annual.
That's annually, correct. And depending on, this is based on a projection of roughly 100 students average daily attendance at Olive Grove, and yes, that is annual, and could change based on the number of students that are enrolled at Olive Grove, average daily attendance. Okay? Just a little bit about why we are in this situation. We are in this situation we are in because we are what's called a basic aid district. There are 2 types you can see up there. One is state aid, where a district receives a per student amount. Property taxes go up to Sacramento, allocated back to districts based on their average daily attendance. So each student is worth a particular amount times however many students you have, and that is your general fund. We are a basic aid district because of the property values and other tax, the level of taxes that are received in this county. Only 10% of the districts are basic aid.
our property tax dollars go to the county and are reallocated back to us at a higher per pupil amount than the state-funded districts. Okay, most important point here is that there is an opportunity for basic aid districts to receive a partial refund, not a refund, but a, what's the word I'm looking for? Backfill. In the case of our district, we were notified on February 26th that the seat, and you'll see this right here at the bottom, that Olive Grove was claiming 84 in-district students for this current year as of last fall, and that we would not be receiving any reimbursement or backfill for that. So we have three options. I talked about this a little bit before I got started. We need to be pursuing all three of these. All options need to be on the table. This is literally something we cannot afford to lose. First one is to request a general waiver of those stated ed codes. I'll get into a little more detail on that. We would essentially be asking them to waive certain requirements. This is not something that SBE has done before. They have the authority under certain conditions to actually make this happen. But we want to have that option available to pursue a general waiver of portions of those ed codes. Number two is another option for us as well, that the state board authorizes another district as a sponsoring LEA. They have the authority to do that. We're going to ask for a couple things. There's a little bit different with that, but it is something that we're pursuing. And then finally, pursuing legislative changes. Again, our long-term fix does not happen without a legislative change. So we are pursuing all three of those, and part of those resolutions tonight is a major step in that process. So that's way too much information on that slide. That is just for reference. These are the reasons why the state board, they must grant a waiver unless they can make a case for one of these 7 items up here. I would draw your attention to one that is sadly ironic, which is they can actually deny any of our waiver requests based on substantially increasing state costs when the impact on us is potentially 10% of our budget. I found that ironic. This just talks about option 1 in that general waiver process. What are the steps that we need to take? One of the things that you'll note in that process is receiving input from various groups, both on campus and with other advisory groups here on campus. Bottom line, we want input from folks on this process. We're in the middle of doing that. If I receive approval from the board tonight, we have to submit, and just number 1 up here, we have to submit by March 13 to get this process rolling. That is tomorrow. We are ready to go, assuming the resolution's passed. Okay, and the rest of that is all other particulars about the timing. Other things about the possible outcomes and what could happen if we are successful or not with option 1. Number 2, seek designation of an alternative SLEA. That's a sponsoring local education agency, which is just a school district. So we are also pursuing this as an option. This slide just speaks to that process that we would be going through and when the state board would be acting on that. Yes?
And that school district would be backfilled by the state.
Correct. So let me clarify. So her question was, so that district would be backfilled. Yes, I am in conversations with a state aid district, and if we can get that district to become the authorizing school district for a state aid district, there is a dollar for dollar backfill. So that's what we're pursuing. So no impact on them, because state aid districts have a minimum funding guarantee that the state has to backfill for in order to meet. Okay, again, potential outcomes of option number 2. Option number 3, pursuing legislative changes. Again, we must engage here for the long-term success. These are groups that we are already working with on this process. If you haven't been following what's been going on, and most of the board is aware of this, at the state level, there is a significant change in the political winds about how charters operate, what's allowed to happen, what are some of the inequities that currently exist in that structure. That is largely in our favor for the longer-term legislative fix. So these are different groups that we're working with right now on all of our options. How can you help? We have 4 clipboards over there on your way out. If you are interested in being a part of our effort, when we attend and this is for the audience, when we attend the state Board of Education meeting in May, we are going to need some significant support, and we will be coming to the public to express their opinion and support for what we're doing as well as check out our website. We'll have some information there starting tomorrow with some of these things that we are hopefully approving tonight. And there will be an opportunity very shortly for respectful appointed letters to our 2 legislators for this area. Know that Assemblymember Monique Lamone was a former Santa Barbara Unified School Board member. Santa Barbara Unified is also in the same situation we are as a basic aid district. And so she is very supportive of our efforts. So we're very fortunate on that particular point. But we're going to need a full court press very soon in the month of April coming up if we're going to be successful in May. Okay? Questions from the board? This is a public hearing. Anybody else in the public as well? Dr. Bacon.
Scott, 1 comment, 2 questions. Comment. Everybody should know that legislative fixes rarely happen rapidly, and any legislative fix would most unlikely not refund or abate any prior payments that the district would have already made at that time. Scott, question number 1. I'm frequently asked, quote, Dr. Bakey, why isn't the district taking this matter to court? It is apparent to me that most do not know that we have new and aggressive legal counsel. Would you expound to the best that you're able on what legal remedies we are presently pursuing?
Sure. Actually, we have not yet made the payment. There are some significant questions that we have about the number of students that are being reported. And so we are headed towards a situation where we will wind up most likely in court to make a case that those numbers are verified. And if the court directs us to pay, then we're not going to defy a court order. But we are asking for, because the Ed Code right now says shall pay, so we're in that circumstance right now. But given the gravity of this and the consequences for our district, we are willing to go to court to make a case to get a closer accounting for this number of students that are being reported at this time. You're welcome.
And then final
Sure.
question. I still get asked this question, quote, if Olive Grove Charter School appeal was granted by the State Board of Education on July 1st, 2018, then why did the Santa Ynez Valley Union High School District not know of this decision until December 28th, 2018? How could we have been caught so unprepared?
Sure, so we were not caught unprepared. We knew that when they came to us that second time, and we denied, and that process went from us in December to the state board in March. We were in the process of approving our budget in June. Based on the quality of that application, since the first one was not successful, we had no idea, it didn't dream or occur to us that the second one would be successful. Additionally, there was not an accurate accounting of students to even estimate how many students we would be responsible for. There was a jump from the first petition to the second petition in terms of number of students that they anticipated. It jumped 233%. And so we were not, there was no way for us to say, listen, we can realistically budget for, because some of the original numbers were significantly lower, and it would have put us somewhere in the $100,000 range, but what came back, so let me finish the timeline. So July, so we finished our budget. We had no way of knowing how much we would owe Olive Grove, or if we would owe anything, if the state board even approved them. Olive Grove was supposed to submit, after the 5th day of attendance of the start of the school year, an average daily attendance number to the state, which was not reported. It was rather late. And so by the time the state actually got that information and calculated and confirmed those numbers, it was December 28 when we first found out. And the number was substantially higher. Those were both great questions. Questions from the audience about Olive Grove? Yes?
When did we get the first estimate of students and when did we get the actual?
So in their petition, those two petitions, there were two different sets of numbers. Both contained 5-year projections. And again, the difference between those two 5-year projections was 233%. I mean, it was just
So was it taken at the end of the year or the beginning of the year?
So I don't know when they collected those. I have to go back, because it all depends on whether it was period 1 attendance, period 2 attendance. I do not know where they generated those numbers. I'd have to go back and look at that. Go ahead.
Is there anything that we can do as a district to entice another local state aid district to sponsor Olive Grove?
Yeah, currently working on that, and I have a district that is actually seriously considering two things that they need to consider that they do not want, and I don't fault them for this at all. One is they do not want oversight of olive growth. So part of our request would be to maintain, the CDE continues to run. That school district, that state aid school district would simply serve as a pass-through for the dollar, so there's that one-to-one backfill. And they don't want any kind of issues, what's the word I'm looking for? The money coming in late, what's the, cash flow. It doesn't create any cash flow issues for the district. Good question, Steve. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea why the attendance has increased so greatly at Olive Grove?
So, I can't speculate too much. Charter schools have the legal right. There are 4 different centers. There's one in Santa Barbara, here, Lompoc, and Santa Maria Orchid is where the other one is. And there's a 5th satellite that actually operates in San Luis Obispo. Charters, once they're authorized, have the legal right to operate in an adjacent county as well. And numbers can also be, you can utilize numbers from the satellite and other places. Attendance can look very different. Let me just put it that way. There is that, and by the way, we are responsible for K-12 students, not just 9 through 12 as a high school district.
Scott, if you will allow me to
Sure.
also answer that question. That is the whole sum problem of what's going on. Does anybody for one moment think that there are 84 students in the Santa Ynez Valley which are attending Olive Grove Charter School? Rhetorical question. The answer is no. And what Olive Grove is legally allowed to do is to shuffle attendance on paper from, for example, their San Luis Obispo campus to the Buellton campus. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott.
And our property owns taxes located for that.
Correct. So we should be upset.
Absolutely. Yes.
But numbers at a charter school do fluctuate
They do.
in a way because we don't, so we get students automatically by where they live in our district, and so they naturally fund only to our school. Charter schools, you have to sign up at the beginning of every single year. So at the end of the school year for a charter school, you will get like 40 students that say that they are petitioning to come back 100%. And then, so like out of those 84, you get about half of the students committing 100% to come back, and about the other half wouldn't know until a month or 2 into the school year. So I was the Learning Center Coordinator for Family Partnership, which is basically Olive Grove.
Yes.
Our numbers would fluctuate by about, increase by maybe like 50% every single, from spring to fall.
And so like for us, in terms of fighting for our fiscal stability on this one, we're demanding a very close accounting for the attendance. That's what we're doing. Yes, go ahead.
Can you maybe elaborate or review again the out-district students and the funding in case of Olive Grove?
Sure, so the Olive Grove Center can actually have students that live both in our attendance area and outside of our attendance area. And it's based on what districts those students come from, whether or not there's any kind of reimbursement. The list, I received a list from the California Department of Ed that stated there were students on the roster for Olive Grove Charter as far away as Paso Robles Joint Unified, Lucia Mar, Coast Unified, Santa Maria Bonita, amongst others.
Thank you. Yes. Dollars going somewhere else. That's right. Thank you.
Other questions regarding Olive Grove? Please, oh yeah,
Have
you got
other
it.
schools been successful in finding another?
That has not been done before, no. We're looking to be the first. That's a great question. We are definitely trailblazers here. Ultimately, what we hope is that we make a difference not just for us and take care of us, but for others that are in similar situations statewide as well. And that would be the legislative fix we're talking about. Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't know the exact term that you used, but what came to my mind was that we're trying to convince this other state aid district school to do this. What does that look like? What can we do? What can we not do? Is it just a dialogue or?
It's a dialogue with me and the other superintendent and their business manager to ensure, again, that they don't have oversight. I wouldn't want oversight either, and there are no cash flow issues. Those are the two things that it all hinges on.
So it's just trying to make that
clear to them, are they willing to play ball with us on that point? And then will the state allow that to happen?
Are we going to have oversight?
No, we currently do not, we just get to pay.
And again, it's K through 12, so we're
They are
funding
we are
students.
funding K through 12. Now, the dominant number of their students are 9 through 12, but they do have K through 8 as well. Yeah, that's another great question. Yes,
Was
John?
there some reason Olive Grove picked Santa Ynez to petition rather than state aid?
Yeah, that's, I do not have an exact answer for that. I would imagine we're 9-12, and most of their kids are 9-12, and they went for a 9-12. Could they have gone for another district? Yes, they could have.
But they did, right? Because
They did.
we're not the only ones who denied that.
That's correct. There were 6 the first time that were petitioned, and
So they did
6
go
that
after it.
denied. So they're operating multiple sites throughout the county. They currently have 6 sites. One's actually up in Cuyama as well.
Yes, but Scott, the answer to your question is, they wanted a campus here in the Santa Ynez Valley. And so they would not have been able to have filed the initial application with a school district outside of this region.
The reason that they were in this position to begin with was in November of 2016, there was a court ruling, an appellate court ruling that said, because it used to be, and this was common practice, you could be a school district up in Northern California, and you could authorize 12 charters in Southern California. So there was a school district and a charter school district, a charter school that got into a little bit of a fight. The school district won. The ruling in November of 2016, almost halfway through the school year, was, hey, if you are authorized by one school district, you can't operate outside of that unless you're in an adjacent county. So immediately you had literally several hundred schools statewide. 10% of the students in the state of California are educated at a charter. You had hundreds of schools, charter schools statewide, that were immediately non-compliant. That's why they came to us as one out of 5 different districts in our county.
Chris?
Since they were originally or at some point sponsored by the Los Olivos School District, doesn't that technically make them the district that refused them?
No, it wasn't until so they were already authorized. They were going back to the early 2000s. So that was a complete setup there. For other reasons, they separated, became authorized by somebody else. Then the satellite situation became illegal. That's a good question, too. Julie.
I'll just address that. I was on the board at Los Olivos.
She knows this very well.
And we terminated the charter school for one basic reason. Charters, one of the main requirements for a charter is to serve the unmet needs of students within a district. And at Los Olivos, we had 1 student in the district attending Olive Grove Charter School. So the simple fact is, we could serve that one unmet need students' need, so we didn't need the charter school, and that's how we terminated. I just want to echo, by the way, what Scott's saying about get involved. These are our property tax dollars being spread incredibly thin, and if you want to have this conversation that we're going to have later in next year, you need to get involved. And you can do something as simple as Google State Board of Education. You can send an email to each state board member telling them that you don't want to see this in here. And family partnership has operated stably and ably and capably in this valley for a number of years. In fact, the people who started family partnership were the original folks who started Olive Grove. So we don't need 2 of the same type of charter school in this little valley. So again, I urge you to get involved. If minimally, send an email, write a letter, do something. Don't let this one pass you by. Thank you, Julie.
Yep, and again, if you're interested, reports over here. Thanks, some great questions.
Yeah, Tori, go ahead.
Just one comment. I've been extremely impressed with Superintendent Corey's work on this, the way he's pursued this and explained it very carefully. He's done a stellar job. I'm new to the board. I was faculty for many years, and I have to say I've been very, very impressed. So he's really working hard for us with this issue.
Closes the public hearing on this. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. All right, item 2, these are wordy, so bear with me. approval of resolution 2018-2019-14 regarding consideration of an action on authorizing a request for waiver of portions of Education Code sections 47635, 47632, 47605, and 47663, and the corresponding regulations regarding the transfer of in lieu of property taxes to Olive Grove Charter School, Buellton, from the State Board of Education pursuant to Ed Code Section 47635. Now, before we have a motion, et cetera, there's a public comment. Julie Kennedy.
It's okay, I already made it.
A pass?
Okay.
All right, that's great, thank you. Okay, so, I need a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. That was motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, Laura?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Item 3, approval of resolution 2018-2019-15 regarding consideration of an action on authorizing a request to the State Board of Education for designation of an alternative local educational agency to serve as the sponsoring local educational agency as defined in Ed Code Section 47632 for Olive Grove Charter School, Buellton. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second to approve. Is there any discussion? All right, Laura?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. We're cut out for you.
I'll let our
All right.
council know.
Great, thank you. All right, item 4, approval of 2018-2019 second interim report, second interim certification, and second interim multi-year assumptions. Alicia,
I'm going to use the podium.
you
so I
sure
have
can.
somewhere to put stuff. Okay, so good evening, everyone. We've been discussing the second interim budget for the past few months. All the numbers used in our discussions up until this point have been estimates, and tonight we discuss where our second interim numbers actually lie. As a reminder, our second interim numbers include actual expenditures through January 31st and projections through the remainder of the fiscal year. Because we haven't yet reached a decision as to reductions in expenditures, no reductions are included in the second interim budget that you are about to review. Any subsequent decisions that are made by the board this evening will be captured with our original budget for the 19-20 fiscal year that will be brought before you for approval in June of this year. Dr. Dillon, special thoughts? Oh, you took it out.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
Chop, chop. Okay, so the major changes from first interim to second interim, there were 7 major changes. The first being that the Olive Grove Charter School payment was moved into the expenditures of the actual budget. In prior budget iterations, you saw the Olive Grove Charter School payment as an assignment at the end coming out of the ending fund balance. You also saw it at $1.2 million, being conservative given that that's what we were told the payment was likely to be by the end of this year. However, we've been directed by the County Education Office to move it into expenditures and to not move the expenditure, to not include the expenditure of 1.2, but to include the current P1 certified expenditure amount of $753,000 and change. We hired an academic dean for Refugio School, so you will see a subsequent increase in salaries and benefits on both the restricted and unrestricted side, as her salary has portions of each. So in response to the overwhelming confusion with the difference between our second interim budget and our actuals, which are the actuals are the last budget, so to speak, that comes before the board, and it tells you exactly what you spent throughout the year. Second interim still included all of the budget buffers that we have for specifically maintenance and the tech department, where we make sure that we over budget their expenditures in the event of equipment failure, maintenance needs that we don't want it to be a negative surprise to the budget. So we have always historically budgeted high and included the buffers in the budget. We've heard loud and clear that that causes confusion and that people would like to see a second interim budget with numbers that come in closer to unaudited actuals. So we are moving in that direction. And as such, you will see a reduction in expenditures on both the restricted and the unrestricted side as a way of moving towards that goal. It is something to note, though, with the reduced buffers now and in the future, that if something were to happen catastrophic, a large SQL server, for instance, is my best example because it just recently happened. If something like that expensive piece of tech were to go down, the buffer in the budget wouldn't cover that. So it would be a negative hit to the ending fund balance that we historically have not seen before, because we've had these budget buffers in place. So it's just something to be aware of. It doesn't happen every year or anything like that, but just know that if something does arise like that, it would come off the ending fund balance if the buffer would no longer be there. In some good news, we received classified professional development block grant funds. These are one-time restricted funds in the amount of about $6,000 that are to be used specifically for classified professional development. So we're excited about that. We're coming up with a plan to send some classified people to some trainings this year and next. We also received about $38,000 in one-time restricted grant funds to be used to address low-performing student needs, and these funds are being used to fund the multi-tier system of support program Mark mentioned in his presentation. So we're excited about that. Again, that is a one-time grant. We also moved the van purchase that in previous budget iterations was also an assignment coming off the ending fund balance into expenditures. So we were not sure how many of our fleet vans were to the point where they were no longer safe for use. So we budgeted for 4 vans, and that's why you saw the $150,000 coming off as an assignment of the ending fund balance. However, when we reviewed the fleet and had them all checked, only 2 needed to be retired. So we have moved the $75,000 off of an assignment, put it into expenditures, and released the other $75,000 into the ending fund balance. Lastly, you'll see an increase on the restricted expenditure side as a result of the mandatory spend down of our college readiness block grant. This is our final year to spend these funds. Anything that isn't spent by the end of this year has to be paid back to the state, so we avoid that at all costs. Okay, so with the second interim, the current structural deficit as projected for the 18-19 year is $1.8 million. Of the $1.8 million, there are 2 types of expenditures, periodic and ongoing. We have $984,000 in change in transfers out that are making up our structural deficit. This includes things like the one-time payment of the $500,000 for the set aside for the parking lot project. It includes ongoing variable payments, transfers to the cafeteria fund to make up for the expenditures that are not recouped by the students paying for lunches in the free and reduced lunch program and that type of thing. That changes every year depending on how many students participate, what our unduplicated student count is, how many kids participate in the actual program itself. So that changes. It's not ongoing in the nature that it will never go away. Some years it'll be there, some years it won't, some it'll be high, some it'll be low. Then we have our municipal lease payments. At some point, those will end. Our last payment is in March of 2027. So as of that point, those payments will fall off of this aspect of the structural deficit.
For those that don't know what the municipal lease payment is, could you define that, please?
The municipal lease payment is a financing tool used by tax-exempt entities to pay for capital projects. And in our case, it helped pay for the stadium project, bleachers, and everything that you see out there.
And that'll be in 2027?
Yes, the last payment is March of 2027. And we'll free up about $250,000. The last thing that's not listed on there that makes up the transfers out is the ongoing transfer to deferred maintenance. As of right now, our transfer to deferred maintenance is $75,000 a year, and that is per board discretion. When we receive our Prop 51 funds, there is a caveat that we have to make a transfer into the Fund 14 of, if I remember correctly, 3% of our expenditures for the year to receive funds. Then it will become something that we don't have an option as to what we transfer, when we transfer. But as of right now, it is up to board discretion, and it is at the $75,000 a year right now. The other part of the structural deficit is what we are all talking about, is the ongoing deficit. So the ongoing deficit includes things like salaries, benefits, the consumable materials and supplies, services that we use every year, as well as embedded in there the revenue reduction for the Olive Grove Charter School. Because we are transferring property taxes to Olive Grove, it is not an expenditure but a reduction of revenue. So if you look in your SACS documents and you look at Form Fund 01 on line 1, you will see the reduction of $753,000, which makes up the Olive Grove revenue reduction.
And just a quick clarification, we have not paid that, we're required to include it. And if a court orders us to pay that amount or any variation thereof, that's why we had to include it in there, because technically that code says shall pay. So that's why we had to include that, even though we've not yet made that payment.
What we're looking at here is a snapshot of our current reserve levels and how we get to the point of saying what we have left over and what we don't. We began this year with a $7.4 million balance. After the projected deficit spending this year, we are projected to end at about $5.6 million. Of the $5.6 million, $525,000 of that is assigned currently, $325,000 for the bleacher site work, and $200,000 for ancillary Measure K funds. After removing the $525,000, we have to remove our 30% reserve, which is currently the level set by board resolution. That equates to $4.1 million, leaving us with an undesignated, or for lack of a better term, left over $923,000 this year in our general fund. Yes, ma'am.
For the benefit of the public, can you elaborate a little bit on the Measure K ancillary funds of $200,000?
Absolutely. When Measure K passed, one of the major covenants that the district made with the public was that we would not have all of the projects be on the back of public funds, and that we would start to participate in paying for more deferred maintenance and ancillary projects that came up. So things that could not be paid for with bond funds, such as after you rip out a wall and fix the pipe that's in there, repainting, that type of stuff, can't be paid for with bond funds because it wasn't a bond project, bond approved. So the ancillary funds are set aside to finish the project, so to speak, or to put the lipstick on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so while the $923,000 excess sounds fantastic, and it is important to take into account how that plays into a multi-year projection. So the current multi-year projection, before discussing the slide, I do want to apologize. There is a difference in the numbers shown for our beginning and ending balance cells from what you have in your packet. When I originally created the presentation, I accidentally only pulled the beginning balances for the unrestricted funds and stuck them in there rather than the combined restricted and unrestricted funds, which is more accurate to discuss the entire Fund 01, not just a portion of it. So I corrected it and added the combined beginning balances and ending balances in here. So you'll see a difference in those cells. So this slide shows the same reserve breakdown in each column that you saw on the previous slide, and how we got to the undesignated or leftover funds that we have for each year. And as you can see, we expect a negative undesignated ending fund balance by the end of 1920 unless reductions are made to expenditures for the 1920 year. We have a severe jump in the negative leftover fund balance in 2021 to a $2.2 million figure. Now, we all know that our reserves don't just lie in Fund 01. Many years ago, Fund 17 was established as an additional sort of squirrel fund, extra savings account that we have. And it has only served to confuse people by saying what we have in Fund 01. Oh, but wait, we also have this in Fund 17. So in order to ease that type of confusion, we will be transferring the remainder of the balance of Fund 17 into Fund 01 with the 1920 budget year. We can't do so yet, so that's why I have to show it to you as an additional fund being added back in. But if you look at 1819, the total remaining, or the excess reserve that we have after you add back in the savings account of Fund 17 jumps up to 1.9 million. Over the 2 years, we do not become negative with these extra funds until 2021. The important thing to note about that is that adding Fund 17 into Fund 01 is a big deal, because it now means that when we look at Fund 01, Fund 01 comprises every last cent that we have available to the district. So in the event that something happens, there is no additional safety net outside of whatever reserve it is that you set. So we have a healthy reserve right now. The 30% reserve is healthy. You know, any subsequent decision you make to that reserve, please know that that reserve that you set will be the only thing left after, you know, calculated spend down to that reserve level. Yeah.
Total remaining at the bottom, 1.9 to 739. Can you please explain the changes between those?
The difference, like why it falls?
Correct.
Deficit spending in the 1920 year. So we deficit spend by $251,000 in 1920, bringing the reserve balance down. Additionally, we deficit spend in 1920, so we have a beginning balance of 5.6 million. Through deficit spending and all of our normal spending, we have an ending balance of 3.9 million. If we remove the $4.1 million reserve, we are missing $251,000 in Fund 01. So we are negative $251,000. When you add back in Fund 17 of the 990,000, you're left with the 739,000. Does that make sense to everybody? Same thing in in year 2021. The only difference being that Fund 17 would drop from 990,000 to 739,000 because we would have used 251,000 in the 1920 year to float that negative balance. So I don't know how many people in the public understand, I know the board understands, but for the benefit of the public, the 30% reserve as it stands right now, once the board commits something to a board resolution, it becomes like law. Like the county cannot approve our budget if we do not have that 30% reserve set aside, or whatever it is the reserve is set at the board at that time. So because we have that 30% reserve, these projections that I show you have to include the 30% reserve at that level and no lower. So in 1920, you notice like our 30% reserve is 4.1 million. Well, 4.1 million can totally cover the negative 251,000, so why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because we are legally not allowed to take that 251,000 out of the 4.1 million unless we take a board action to change or alter the resolution as it currently stands. That's why it's a big deal. So.
And so that's one of the reasons we have a resolution on the agenda this evening for that purpose, to free up some of that. Corrected my understanding here, beginning balance for 18-19, beginning of this year 7.2, ending balance projected to be 5.5.
I think you're looking at the old version, it's 7.4.
I'm sorry, I have the old one.
That's okay, but I get what you're saying.
I'm sorry, you're right, I have an old version too. But the difference essentially between the beginning balance 18-19 and ending balance 18-19, that is the amount of the reserve that we have spent this year, is that correct?
That is the amount of the reserve that we are projected to spend
By the end of this year. So one point, someone help me with the math there. Whatever the 1 point.
Approximately 1.8 million.
Right at 1.8. That's how much has been spent out of the reserve this year.
Projected
by the end of this year. Thank you.
Okay, so that leaves us only with our recommendations. So we recommend that we remove the $500,000 in the parking lot project. This project can be tabled until Prop 51 dollars come in, and then we can revisit how we handle the project, how it's done, how it's packaged. It doesn't need to come out of general fund dollars at this point in time.
Alicia, would you tell the audience what
Prop 51, they are bonds that the governor of the state of California, well, that the taxpayers voted in at the last election, allowing for the modernization, for the selling of bonds for the modernization of school districts. So school districts get in line, they submit their application, and then they receive, I don't want to say free money, but basically free money from the state of California to use for modernization of school districts. So there are certain requirements. The money comes in restricted. It can only be used for certain purposes. And also there's something called the Leroy Green Act, which will require us to make a transfer of, I believe it was 3% of our expenditures into the deferred maintenance every year. They want you to not just get this money and then not do anything with deferred maintenance. So they have sort of a required plan in there to make you put money into deferred maintenance. So it's not completely free because we have to make the transfer, but technically free money to modernize our school.
And we have,
Yes.
We are in line, we have submitted our application, and I believe we are in line for several million.
So our
at this
state
point.
eligibility for Proposition 51, of which we were able to, it's a matching
Dollar
proposition for us, matching dollars, and so we have it's going to be closer to 8.5 in eligibility. We are currently in line for right at 7.2, and one more application to go in to capture the rest of that. So we've been trying to leverage everything that we can to get as much of
these
those
dollars.
funds, to capture those dollars.
We also recommend a reduction in expenditures for the 1920 year of between $350,000 to $400,000 as a way of ensuring that the structural deficit that we do have doesn't grow so large by the end of these 3 fiscal years that we can't make reasonable reductions in that year, that we don't want to be left with our back against the wall, so to speak. We want to make the reductions for the 1920 year and then keep the 1920 budget under review to ensure that we spend down the excess reserve. We don't want to continue to be in this situation where we have this super high reserve and then we're still talking about reducing expenditures. So we would like to make a conscious effort to spend down the excess reserve, being careful not to create negative ending fund balances in the out years. So it's a balance that we're going to have to review throughout the year.
Could you explain to the public why it's important for us to keep the reserve? Because I
Yes.
keep hearing people say you only have to have 4%.
Yes. Yeah, so the question Ms. Burtness asked was, why is it important for our district to keep a reserve over the legally mandated 4%? The 4% wouldn't even cover half or a quarter of our monthly payroll. So being a basic aid school district, the state will not come in and backfill shortfalls. Take, for instance, Olive Grove Charter, which could be, let's just round it off to $1 million this year. Because we are at least $3 million into basic aid, we would have to lose $3,001,001 before the state would come in and give us that $1 back. They will only backfill what we lose after we fall out of basic aid. So we have to be prepared for hits to the budget such as Olive Grove, such as if for some reason property tax revenue were delayed coming into the district for cash flow purposes. There are a number of things that could require us to dip into these reserves. Catastrophic events, fires, look at the Montecito mudslides, any of these types of things that could hit the budget. If we don't have a reserve, we are dead in the water because nobody's going to come in and save us until after we spend $3 million at least.
May I ask a question
Of course.
Mr. Corey? It's my understanding that several years back, before your tenure here, we were in such a situation, we were down to $55,000. We had to make payroll and those kinds of things. So this is a legitimate concern because short like this, then people don't get paid, bills don't get paid. It's quite disastrous, right?
Exactly.
I would say 3 million is as low as we want to go, given some of those risk exposures that we have. And the most current example is Olive Grove. If we're required to pay $1 million, that would put us in an exceedingly tough spot. And then on an ongoing basis to address that, we're going to do everything we can not to do that. But we've got to have a safety net.
Until 2023, it could be $1 million.
Correct. Olive Grove is authorized by the state board for a 5-year term that has to be re-upped after that expires.
So along these lines, we do recommend reducing the reserve resolution from 30% of annual expenditures to the flat 3 million. The reason being 30% grows. Our expenditures grow every year. This is why we're in the position that we are in and are having the discussions that we're having. 30% of annual expenditures, which grow every year, grows itself. So it becomes overly burdensome to the district to maintain a reserve and the programs at the same time. So the 3 million allows us to be conservative enough that we can take care of our employees and our campus in the event of any kind of an emergency, but it doesn't force our hand to cutting programs and people unnecessarily. It's a good balance.
Alicia?
Yes.
Just so that everybody knows, I've done the math. So if our reserve of 4.15 million equals 30%, then reducing that to 3 million, just for everybody's information, for talking points, we will now be operating in reserve at 21.7%.
Okay. That sounds about right.
I say that for everybody that believes that 30% was obscene.
Right.
Everybody can now decide whether 21.7 is reasonable or not, but that is the number.
Yeah, we can no longer justify 30% that grew each year.
So, like Scott mentioned earlier, I'll sort of touch upon it. We do have some hope on the horizon in regards to the Olive Grove issue that we're discussing. Part of our deficit is as a result of this unforeseen hit because of Olive Grove. There are 3 assembly bills right now that have been introduced that would eliminate the ability of charter schools to appeal rejected applications to the county and the state. So they would leave that decision with the local LEAs, which would be fantastic. They would also place an unspecified cap on charter school growth, and it would, and I think this is a huge, huge win for local school districts, it would enable school districts to consider the financial ramifications of approving a charter school, because currently that is something that is specifically not allowed. So the school district could not consider the financial ramifications on us as an LEA, or whether or not the petition included adequate financial documentation to prove that the charter could be successful. We were not allowed to consider either of those factors in whether or not we approved or denied the charter. And that really ties our hands because, I mean, in our case, $1 million hit to our budget is huge. So that's important for us. Are there any questions?
Chris, you have a question? I do. It's sort of 2 questions. We just recently went through a very, very contentious negotiation, and we consented to a 4% raise. What is the impact in a dollar amount of that raise ongoing? And following up with the second part, how does it compare with the amount of money that we're now looking at in reductions?
So I don't want to throw out a number that I haven't fully prepared for you because I do not want someone to say, wait, when I add A and B, it does not equal C. So I do not want to just throw out a number, but what I can tell you is we went into negotiations knowing 2 things. We had a structural deficit that was growing, but we also had an ending fund balance or excess reserve that was also growing. So we went into negotiations knowing that any approved increases, whether on schedule or off, would increase our structural deficit. We did this knowing that we were trying to make a concerted effort to spend down the excess reserves, which is what we are doing, but it is also, on the flip side, what is putting us in the position now to have to review how large that deficit is growing, because we know we can cover the deficit this year, and we know we can cover it next year, as shown by our ending fund balance with the Fund 17. But when we get to the 3rd year out, that structural deficit has grown, and our reserve will be gone if everything goes as projected, and we won't have the funds to cover it. So we went in knowing that it was a gamble, knowing that it would increase our structural deficit, but also knowing that we wanted to spend down the reserve. So we knew the ramifications, we understood that. Now we're just dealing with how those ramifications play out, how quickly they play out, you know, what unforeseens come about, what one-time monies come about. So I can give you the number, the actual number, dollar figure of what the the raises cost. They should be in the board packet, $8,200 for that month. But I don't want to throw out a number that I don't have prepared.
But it's a pretty,
I would say it's about half. I mean, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, all said and done. So if our structural deficit that is ongoing is $800,000, it'd be approximately half.
question back there.
A question on how the excess funds were created. Was it through just an excess of revenue over cost, or was it some type of funding from a government source, number one? Number two, it sounds like you're going to spend down the excess reserves and eventually you go negative, or that's a potential. How do you replace those reserves? Is there a plan for that, and how do you do it?
So I'll answer the second question first because it's fresher. Our plan for that is to not get to that point. So our plan is to not go negative so that we aren't in a position where we have to replace reserves. What we want to do is get to a balanced budget where we don't have an excess, we keep our $3 million or 30%, whatever our reserve is set at, and we balance our budget. That's where we want to be. And we are in the unique position where we are ahead of this enough that we could get to that point and never see this negative that we are projecting if we play our cards right. So hopefully we won't ever have to talk about how we rebuild our reserves, because how you rebuild your reserves are you cut expenditures over and above the revenue that you receive, and we don't ever want to be in that position because that's not what's best for kids, for our district, for our people. So we don't want to get there. That's the main goal. Your first question.
How do you build up such a good reserve?
Yes. So that happened over many years. It's a myriad of things. One being that we budgeted a large buffer in certain accounts such as deferred maintenance, maintenance itself, tech budget, and at the end of the year, those budgets weren't spent, so revenue was left over. In addition, we had random influxes. One year we had $800,000 with the dissolution of the RDA. Another year we had about $250,000 in back taxes, miraculously appear. So it's the perfect storm, and for all intents and purposes, it's the most wonderful place for a district to be in, where we are arguing over having too much money. So, it's a good thing, but on the flip side, it does cause some hard discussion.
Another source of one-time revenues that we received consistently over the last 5 years under Governor Brown. Whenever there were, he was not in favor of committing to ongoing monies to school districts, other than what he was doing with the state aid districts already with the new funding formula. We had 5 years where the economy was doing really well, and there was an increase per ADA, average daily attendance, each student, a per student amount for each of those 5 years, because there was a surplus in the state budget. That was how he chose to do that. Under Newsom, that has stopped. So that's a good example of something that seemed to be consistent and is now gone with a new governor. So that was another source. The redevelopment agencies, as you referenced before, that had been in place. They were established just after World War II, have been around since that time, and Governor Brown chose to dissolve that. Something like that will never happen again. So those are some of the one-time fluctuations that we've experienced.
Great question. Yes.
I have a question specifically about a portion of the structural deficit, the $325,000 that's subsidized for the bleachers. Is that the football bleachers and the baseball bleachers that were asked for a few years back by the baseball team and their boosters, or is that just one section of bleachers? Like, what does that entail?
So I don't believe football had anything to do with it. I believe they're separate. This is the bleachers that were requested by baseball, that when we inspected the bleachers, they were.
Just real quick, so it wasn't a request. We had bleachers that were literally falling apart, rusting members that we could not repair. We also had no handicap access out there, ADA access. We demoed those bleachers, and we have been moving other bleachers back and forth, which is causing its own problems. But the $325,000 associated with the actual purchase, the design and installation approval through the state, and there's some flat work, some drainage work has to happen.
Well, when I was talking to some people on boosters, they were saying their estimated price, and they were talking about raising money, 100% themselves, was $30,000. So I want to know how it went from $30,000 to $325,000.
So I don't know what.
I can address that.
I'm sorry, did you finish your question? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, okay. That seems like quite the inflation from 30,000 to.
Sure, go ahead.
I can speak to that. Unfortunately, no matter what we do on campus, if you were to try to do the same thing for your home, it would cost a fraction of the cost. They put so much red tape and bureaucracy that the school districts are legally required to jump through to get the same exact thing done. We have to spend quadruple, if not more, the price that any private organization could do. So they probably could buy the same bleachers, put them in the same way, and spend considerably less. We are not allowed to unless we have DSA inspectors. All of our plans have to go to DSA for inspection prior to even purchasing the materials. So when we put these bleachers in, we now have to address what's called ADA path of travel. So now we have to address ADA access from whatever parking lot is closest all the way to the bleachers. So that includes restrooms, that includes everything, and the cost to get all that done becomes substantial, and it is not something that anyone can choose not to do. We don't have an option, unfortunately.
So if we're installing bleachers, it's not just a matter of purchasing a set of pre-made bleachers. We could do the handicap access has to occur, but what we also put on the ground and how we put it on the ground and compaction, there's a lot of dirt work associated with that as well. So it's not just, buying a set of bleachers off the shelf. Could we descope the size? They're 200 seats apiece, roughly, with ramps for handicap access. The size could certainly be descoped, but the cost associated, it's not just a, hey, 30,000 for bleachers and we're good.
It sounds like they were told when they said they wanted to help fundraise some of the money, that they were told not to bother, that it would be handled, the money would be set aside through MetroPay or whatever funds came in. Is there a reason that they were told not to bother fundraising themselves? Is there, like, because of all the loops and red tape?
Sure. So I may have had a conversation with them about fundraising. I don't know. What I do know is that our baseball boosters have been outstanding. There's a lot of things that are happening out there that happens because they fundraise. But as far as the conversation about telling them, hey, no, you don't, I honestly don't recall. I'd have to confer with Coach Dickey if I actually had that conversation with him.
Alicia, following up, I wasn't on the board, but were there competitive bids entertained for the bleachers? And tell us about that.
There were competitive bids. We piggybacked on a larger district's competitive bid process because they were able to secure a price that we would not be able to secure. So if I remember correctly, it's Alvin Unified. We piggybacked on their competitive bid process. So because they're larger in size, they got a considerable discount that we would not have been able to secure on top of their conducting the same competitive bid process that we would.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Alicia.
All right. Carter.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Carter?
Carter. I'd be happy to talk to you more, Carter, if you'd like.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right. So, let's have a motion. I'm asking for a motion to approve the second interim.
So moved.
And
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? All right, Laura?
Dr. Baker?
Aye.
Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Britton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bennett? Aye. Mrs.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right, let's go on to item 5, the approval of 2018-2019-13, excuse me, regarding minimum fund balance policy from 30% of expenditures annually to fixed amount of $3 million. This is something we just reviewed. So, Superintendent Corey.
I'll entertain questions. I don't think there's any other information that, from my perspective, I think you need, but if there are any questions, I'll take them. I think this is an obvious thing for us to do.
I'd like to have a motion to approve.
I would make a motion to approve, the 2018-2019-13 regarding minimum fund balance policy from 30% to expenditures annually to a fixed amount of $3 million.
Second.
Okay, Eileen, second. Any further discussion? All right, Laura?
Dr. Baker?
Aye.
Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Britton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bennett? Aye. Mrs. Bennett?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, on to item 6. Approval to reverse previous board action taken to spend $500,000 from general fund on replacement of east parking lot. Superintendent.
Again, no further information for this item unless there are questions from the board.
No questions, but I would like to just make a comment. There are chuck holes which are happening that does present a liability. As you know, I've been strongly encouraging that we reverse this expenditure, so I'm very supportive of this motion. But I would make top priority if and when the Proposition 51 dollars start flowing, we got to jump on that parking lot with immediate repair of chuck holes, even if that's only going to be there for a few weeks until a major revision is done.
We do have some 2 to 3 year fixes that we need to engage in out there in order to make the parking lots safe. That is correct. We're paying for front end alignments, I'm sure. Some of it.
All right, may I have a motion?
I move to rescind the previous board action to allocate $500,000 in general funds towards the renovation of the east parking lot.
Is there a second?
Second.
John. We have a motion and a second to rescind the previous board action. Laura?
Dr. Baker.
Aye.
Mrs. Preston. Aye. Mrs. Perkins.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Okay, on to item 7. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. This is approval of resolution 2018-19-16 regarding layoff of classified employees. And I have quite a few speaker slips here. Sure. Ashley Coelho, Teacher of the Year nominee. Love it.
Good evening. We heard a lot about the structural deficit that's been thrown around for many years now. And I believe that administration should set the example and lead the way and not make cuts to our office staff. Our office staff has taken numerous hits over the years. We have 3 official administrators at Santa Ynez High School and 1 unofficial administrator who is at Refugio High School, but is coded as a teacher on special assignment, so that we pass the California Department of Education requirement of the admin to teacher ratio. Declining enrollment means less students, which should imply less administration. Cutting our office staff hurts teachers and students. Students and teachers know and respect them all. Our school will not function well without them. I want to remind everyone that our office staff is family. They bleed orange and black and go above and beyond for teachers and students. You can find all of them at numerous athletic events. Teachers and students are successful because of our amazing office staff. And I want to leave you with one question. Would any other district have 3 to 4 administrators per 909 total students in a district for basic aid or state aid? Thank you.
Even tougher before that. I'd like to thank them for listening to the community members, parents, students, and faculty that have given speeches during these last 2 meetings. I'd like to thank the board and Mr. Corey for going back to the drawing board and proposing new recommendations to cut the budget that do not affect the classroom. There is an old saying that people or the family make a house a home. Without anyone living in the house, the building is just a house. There's not a heart or life to it. The same can be said about a school. Without the people in it, it's just a place of land with a lot of buildings, some equipment, some machines, some sports fields, etc. But it is the people, the students, the teachers, the support staff, the office staff, and the community that create the culture, pride, and passion that make a school a wonderful place to be. I know this school board cares about the community they were elected to serve, and I am optimistic and sure that when today is all said and done, they will make the decisions to keep the cuts away from the students in the classroom and continue to make Santa Ynez not a school, but a home. Lastly, I want to thank every parent, community member, student, colleague, and especially my current and former players that spoke up and wrote letters of support for myself or other staff that were recommended to be cut. It reaffirms the family brotherhood bond that we have created in the football program, and it shows how this generation of young people are going to do great things because they are not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. That also goes for Carter. That was a good job today. Sorry, I was a little off script. Sorry, because they're not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. I'll leave you with this. Two wise women I know, Joanne Reck and Heather Clement, both told me after last week, you're pretty lucky because no one, especially high school teachers and coaches, ever get to hear the type of speeches about you that you were able to hear. Those only happen at funerals. I'm hoping that today will not be my funeral at Santa Ynez. I'm so thankful to have grown up in this community and be part of it to this day, and I hope to continue to be a pirate for the rest of my life.
Carter Smart. Thank you, Carter.
I am here today because the administration has asked us to come up with solutions. Not with more problems, but how are we supposed to come up with solutions when they won't admit the problems that they have created or they ignore? How do we find solutions when you will not be transparent with us? I've spoken to countless faculty who have told me they are not allowed to talk to me about what's going on. How am I supposed to go into a world and be a functioning adult when I am brushed off by those who are supposed to be called my leaders? What lesson are you teaching your students? I came here today because of the proposed budget cuts, which you guys have gratefully said are not happening this year. But if we had gotten into this budget crisis once, what is to stop it from happening again? Who will pay for the administration's 4% pay increase 2 years from now? This year, it was Laura Seiper and Terry Westphal. It was almost entire programs and many teachers, one of which programs was on the chopping block, the music program, just last week, and on our school's 2017 to 2020 LCAP, under the greatest needs was said to maintain the music program. As a member of the department myself, it's close to my heart, but I'm not just here for the music program. I'm not just here for the art program or the drama department or any of the teachers that you've cut in the past, cut this year, or will cut in the future. I'm here because we are in a small community, and every decision you make affects everyone. It affects my two little brothers who are art lovers. It affects one of them who has started liking football to a concerning point. We are in a small community where everything anyone does is seen and heard, where words fly like nowhere else, and I know it is a hard job that you have and a harder task that you've been put up to. But I also know that as leaders, you have to set a good example for me, for my little brothers, for your colleagues, and for the people who look up to you. I know that you have to make cuts at some point, and the ones that you proposed are not going to be, it was not the first time and it won't be the last time. But when you cut teachers, like Mr. McClurg said, we are a family. And it is like a funeral for one of our family members when you get rid of them. I hope you listen to your community and you are willing to give us more information. Let the students talk to the teachers about what is going on. Do not try to criticize or undermine our opinions. Yes, we may not understand what's going on, but if you do not talk to us, how are we supposed to? I know that it's a hard job, and again, I am sorry that you have faced so much criticism the last week. But you'll have to understand that our frustrations are large and many, and this is just the beginning of them.
Thank you. Paige Zeiden. Did I get the last name correct?
Zida.
Okay, handwriting. Okay.
Hello, my name is Paige Zidek, and I've been going to Santa Ynez for 4 years, and I'm a senior. I would like to start this off by saying that I find it disturbing that the state of California would favor Olive Grove, a school that, to say the least, is unestablished to the point where it exists in a shopping center behind a Burger King and accessible to students who don't own a car, who don't live in Milton, and who don't have the money for transit. and unnecessary because the students that go to Olive Grove have the ability to go to this school, a family partnership, over at Santa Ynez High School, a school with 98 graduation rate, a campus that can accommodate over 1,000 students, plus staff and administration, and a plethora of extracurricular activities and electives that are sadly always the first to get cut, and that is why I'm here to defend them. I'm disappointed yet not surprised that our school board would value money to fill a hole over the art departments and AP classes. For many art departments such as theater and art are creative outlets many cannot find anywhere else in their lives. AP classes we have teach us how to understand politics and what helps students who take those classes to not waste thousands of dollars in a college class that they could have taken in high school. And with this, I must ask, are the lives and the futures of artists, actors, and actresses, musicians, politicians, or vocalists somehow worth less than filling a pit in the school? Do we not deserve the same education and chances at success as those who are Do we not deserve the same chances at a career and success that we are passionate about as other people? I find it shameful that anyone would value athletic ability over creativity, the body over the mind, and money over the future of our students. And last but not least, there is absolutely no need for $11 million Olympic-sized swimming pool, for any renovations on the cafeteria, for beautification of the school in any way, and for any reasons to fill a pit. What we do need are classes that can help students actually be prepared for the future. AP classes matter more than a pool. And that is all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paige. Sure, John.
I'd just like to make a quick comment for clarification. The Measure K monies are required by law to be spent in the manner in which the voters designated them. So if we were not to, quote, fill up the pit, those monies saved could not be used to save any teacher's position. Also, the pool is completely, if it's going to be put in, it will be completely funded by private monies. Those are not monies which would be available to us to use for a different purpose.
Thank you, John. I took the words right out of my mouth. Follow up. All right, Chris Avery. Thank you for waiting, Chris.
Board members, I want to thank you for your thoughtful, deliberate, and patient decision-making process in trying to keep cuts far away from the classroom. I know the students, faculty, and community will eventually appreciate all your efforts. None of you get paid. None of you are compensated for what you do. It's a thankless job. You do it because of your passion, and we appreciate your passion and your sincere wrestling and anxiety and stress over the last 8 days trying to make the best decision on behalf of this school community. I would be disappointed in myself if I didn't gently ask that you wait before deciding to cut Kathy Rick, Gordon White, and other valuable classified employees. There is not a hard March deadline on classified employees as there are with certificated faculty members. From what I understand, and I could be wrong, that classified employees have to be notified 60 days in advance of their being terminated if that was the decision that the board eventually tried to make. So it does buy you a little bit more time to try and come up with some creative decision making as to try and help. We've heard terms before about keeping cuts away from the classroom. What the jobs that Laura, Alexa, Terry, Kathy, and Gordon all do affect the classroom dramatically. Kathy is a heart and soul bright light to this faculty. I have been in her office as repeated interruptions with emergency copy needs being made right away. She handles all of them deftly and with a smile. Besides that, she is my right arm and left arm in terms of supporting athletics and the goals that are there. And it's going to be a devastating cut if she were terminated. You have wisely given yourself a buffer against devastating financial potholes by keeping a healthy reserve. I do appreciate the fact that you decided intentionally to lower that reserve and to also put off the parking lot on behalf of the community and their wishes. I'm just here to say that Kathy is invaluable to the faculty and athletic department. Gordon's an asset to campus security and an immediate relief valve against major classroom disruptions that can occur. Again, thank you. I see my time is expiring, and I do have to use the restroom.
Thank you, Jerry. Julie Kennedy.
Thank you. I just want to thank Alicia for all the great help. I sent her a laundry list of questions about the budget. She was super prompt, thorough, so yeah, thank you very much. It was really helpful. Just wanted to say, I did go back through the budget information as far as what was provided on the website, just to get a little bit of an idea, historical, before going through all the second interim. And a couple of interesting points I just wanted to bring up. Not once has the school deficit spent in the last 5 years. There's been a positive net increase each year. This is going back starting with the 2013-14 school year. Also, each year revenues were greater than projected. I realize that could be largely due to the block grants and some other unexpected money which you can't budget or project. And then lastly, revenues were always greater than expenses. That's a great position to be in. You're taking in more than you're spending. And also in that same time, the board did vote to remove both the French and Latin from the foreign language program in a year when we had a pretty significant net increase. So with the second interim projected net decrease of $1.8 million, it's a pretty big swing from the adopted budget, which was a positive $48,000. And digging down, I think, first of all, yeah, thank you for the resolution on the parking lot, as well as the reserve, flattening it to the $3 million. That'll definitely help. But I think you have to not consider the olive grove payment in there. And in doing so, that should help bring the deficit, the overall deficit, down quite a bit. We just also finally urge that not to make the cuts to the classroom. Certain cuts are unrecoverable, and in particular, cuts of teachers. And the foreign language program is a great example. We won't get those back. So if we make big cuts, especially to the sports program, we're never going to get those back, and that's going to forever impair those activities and certainly the educational value here at the school. So my recommendation would be, honestly, let it ride one more year. If we actually end up really in a serious deficit spend, we can address next year. I mean, I know that's a big gamble. Nobody wants to be accused of being fiscally irresponsible, but there's so many big unknowns out there. And just my last 30 seconds, for everybody out here who works with budgets in a business environment, the school budget is not like that at all. This is a totally different beast. It varies daily. And if you look at what was presented in January through tonight, you're going to see a lot of different movement, and it'll continue to move. So to try to use the analogy of, well, if I presented this kind of budget to my boss, I'd probably be fired. Yeah, you probably would. But it's not the case in school budget. This is a totally different beast. Really appreciate all the effort, and okay, my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. Did you want to read Val's comments? Make sure you keep it at 3 minutes. Okay?
Sorry.
No worries.
I'll try to cover this good video.
Okay.
Okay, so this is, Val Allen couldn't be here. She asked if this could just be read for public comment. So let's see. So Val was originally was a Los Olivos school board member when it was an LCFF school, and in that time, through 6 years, 2 different superintendents, we were always presented with deficit spending. We had meetings just like the ones you are having, predicting dire straits and demanding cuts, upset parents, students, and usually teacher and program cuts being recommended. And in those 6 years, when the unaudited actuals were presented, September for all schools, we in fact, because that's what the unaudited actuals is, exactly what the school received and spent, Los Olivos never deficit spent. So she's asking for the following recommendations. She said, wish she did those when she was on the board at Los Olivos. So ask Scott Corey to show you the last 5 years, if not more, of the Santa Ynez budget data, only pulled from unaudited actuals. And you'll find that the high school is in a really healthy, positive fund balance year over year, and that we'd also been making cuts while adding to the reserve. And as a note, she says Santa Ynez receives more money per student than all Santa Barbara high schools, even after they get their LCFF back bill. The second item is just to make sure you understand, and again for the public, that with basic aid, it is important that the school understands the meaning of this status. It is a status that all LCFF schools would trade for, as it means we get more money in per student than they do. And she would ask that Scott to provide you all a list of the Santa Barbara County Schools funding per student, so you can understand that the additional monies the LCFF schools are getting is only to try to bring them to our funding status. It doesn't give them more money. The last is the reserve cut. She's asking to direct Corey not to add to our reserve or present teacher program cuts until we have actually experienced 1 year of deficit spending. This is what the Los Olivos School Board had been told by their superintendent and which we had implemented. She said they're still in deficit spending and being asked to cut, or presented with deficit spending and being asked to cut, including the middle school, while the school has not deficit spent in the 5+ years. So if you would make the cuts, she's recommending only to the 5,000 and 7,000 categories, as well as a full accounting in those 3 items. Okay, time's up. Thank you.
Just real quick, did that state to say that we should allow ourselves to deficit spend 1 year? Did I hear that correctly?
It's the same email. I think she might have emailed
Right.
this to you.
Okay.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. All right. Priya Jackson, Priya still here? Thank you.
First, I want to thank the board for acknowledging the concerns of the community, staff, and students here at Santa Ynez High School. We appreciate your use of time to try and find solutions which would minimize the impact to the classroom and preserve certificated positions so that we can better serve the school. I do believe that the impact to the classroom is not only affected by the quantity of the certificated staff, but also the quality of programs and the quality of other staffing positions on campus. As a commuter from Santa Barbara, I've had to take the 101 every day while the pass was under construction. This increased my commute from 35 minutes to an hour, sometimes more depending on weather and traffic conditions. I have to commute with my son who attends daycare here in the valley. Trying to convince a 2.5-year-old that we are almost there has been a challenge. During that drive, I wish that I had worked closer to home, for my sanity, my safety, and for the safety and well-being of my family. However, from the day I took this position 8 years ago, I knew the school was special. I knew it did not function the way bigger districts did because it cared about its staff. Morale was high, and colleagues helped each other out any way they could. Part of what makes the school special to me is the fact that it can run very smoothly and there are staff here who are happy to help. Some of the staff reside in the administration building. The system we have here to help mitigate distractions and encourage a positive learning environment are components that are lacking at other schools. For example, A3. Ask any VP that works here, has worked here, and they'll tell you that I'm not a major contributor to that room, as I try my best to keep all students in the learning environment. However, occasionally, I do find need for it. And I have had several students in my classes thank me for sending someone to A3 because they found themselves able to learn better without that person distracting them. Another reason I do not have to send students over there is because they just know it exists and they don't want to lose instruction time. So just the power of it being there is enough. I think there's value in keeping this program, and it may be underestimated as to how much effort it takes to operate. Another reason I enjoy working here is the staff services feature. It's in the name, staff services. Mrs. Rick provides a valued service that all staff here can appreciate and agree with. She makes her job look easy, but I assure you, it is not. I have been here long enough to see the staff services position go through some changes, and it did not run as smoothly as it does now. She is a joy to work with and just another asset to this campus. I have worked on other campuses that do not have a Mrs. Rick, and it is a nightmare. Leaving teachers without materials for their classrooms, having one copier for the entire staff because other copiers have broken down, is a real problem. But Mrs. Rick is on top of it. The minute a copier goes down, boom, she's on it. I'll just leave you with this. These positions may not be in the classroom, but I assure you that they directly affect the classroom and operations.
Heather Blanchard.
Heather Blanchard, round 3. Thank you for listening to the public that elected you and the students that you represent. You found another way. May not be a perfect way, but it is another way. I once again encourage you to develop a budget oversight committee that includes all stakeholders. I again offer to serve on this committee. Unless the district takes the necessary time to understand the true financial health of the district, I fear we will end up back in the same position next year. Taking a close look at services and other operating expenses is a good place to start. This area of the budget has grown significantly in recent years, from $1,285,483 in the school year 2013-14 to the $1,945,093 that it is today. Why? What are these expenditures, and are they truly necessary? While I applaud the administration for taking furlough days in order to reduce expenditures, I am concerned that this was not the first option presented to the board just 8 days ago. That go-to plan was to cut programs and teachers. Furlough days were not even on the list of initial proposed cuts made by Superintendent Corey. Instead, Superintendent Corey immediately recommended cutting programs and teachers. He would have succeeded if not for the overwhelming public outcry. Shouldn't the district's first option be to not cut programs and teachers? Shouldn't that always be the last-ditch effort made after all other options have been exhausted? Sadly, I have been in the profession long enough to know that it is often not. I sincerely thank you for finding another way and ask that you please consider the points I made today so that in the future programs and teachers are not on the chopping block. Before my 3 minutes are up, I must make one more plea for the Intro to Ed program. Last week, a board member asked how many students were enrolled. I believe it was Mr. Swanitz that replied the numbers were low, 14 or 15. Actually, there are 19 students, but regardless of the number, in this first grade teacher's humble opinion, if only one of those students goes on to become a teacher, then that program has paid for itself. The California state standards are for college and career preparedness. The Intro to Ed program is the very definition of both. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Superintendent Corey did not make the recommendations that any programs, any teachers be laid off. Those are merely options for the board to consider that could get us to the desired numbers. But
I did have a recommendation.
You did have a recommendation.
There were options and recommendations.
Yes, I did. I had a recommendation.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, there were 3 options and a recommendation. Joni Jameson?
Good evening. I used to sit where you are, and I know how tough some of the decisions are that you have to make. But I plead with you not to put it on the back of the kids.
There are students that you have at this school, the only reason they stay in school and they try to get good grades is so they can be in the athletic program. And you are gifted with a great coach that everybody loves. The idea of possibly, I heard that maybe the auto shop was going to be done away with. That we used to call them ROP programs. I don't know if you have ROP anymore. But Santa Ynez was known for their ROP program. It was the best in the West. And there were young people that went from our ROP programs with their certificates, and they were able to get jobs when they left high school. They weren't going to go to college. There was no way. That was not within their framework. I plead with you, don't put this on the back of the kids and the teachers. Find a way, some other way, to make sure that payment can be made and that the kids can benefit from an excellent education. That's what Pirates are known for. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Shelley Donahue?
Good evening. I would just like to say thank you to the board and staff for listening to everyone that spoke at last week's special meeting and for taking the time to read the emails that people sent to you for those who could not attend the meeting. I've reviewed your packet and that you prepared for today's meeting and appreciate your creativeness in finding a way to keep the cuts away from where it will hurt the most, the students. I know you have some big decisions to make regarding teacher staff, layoffs, and reductions. And I just hope that they are aye votes all around with keeping the cuts away from our future.
Thank you. Kim Curtis?
Okay, so it's hard to go toward the end of the line. There's a lot of gratitude being passed around and a lot of good suggestions. I've got my script here, but I gotta throw in, it'll probably take 30 seconds. I've experienced a hard year, my whole district has. I'm a fellow educator in the Valley, I'm in Buellton, and it was one hard year last year. This is my first real experience here at high school with this board and with this staff. My daughter's a transfer student. And when I opened up the board packet on Sunday and I read the resolutions, I'm gonna get sappy on you now, I got tears in my eyes. Because I felt like, for the first time in a long time, I heard some ideas that were walking the talk. But it's not, it's about protecting our kids. And for the first time in a long time, I heard some ideas that were far away from kids, or as far as they could be. Again, I got chills and I got tears in my eyes and I started calling people. And I said, get online, open up that packet and read where they've come. So I've not experienced this before, and I've done this for a long time. And I've not experienced as board, I have to be careful here, in trying circumstances that has been so open. Now, I've only been to 3 meetings. Last Tuesday was one of them. But I feel like a couple times you've taken comments from the public that you didn't have to. And it's hard for me to keep quiet. So when you open it up to me or anybody else for comments, I certainly appreciate that, because dialogue is how we work through things. I'm going to go to my script. My name is Kim. I'm a parent of a current student and a fellow educator. At one of your meetings in the fall, my first one, my daughter and I took the opportunity to speak to you about how grateful we were that you found the resources and supported music. And we've got some music kids in here, and so there were some adults earlier. We thank you. We hope it keeps going, and come to our events. I'm here tonight, though, to express my gratitude, my trust, and admiration for some amazing work that you all have been doing, apparently, in the last 8 days or so. About the financial challenges. Thank you for inviting the community, including staff and students, and thanks for all the students, and isn't that great? I saw one of my former students up here. That was wonderful. To participate in this problem-solving effort. Thank you for what appears to be a good deal of creativity, and that any changes made to our existing programs stay as far away from students as possible. And I'm sitting here listening to some people thinking things I didn't think of. I don't know all the intricacies that go on here, you know, and so yeah, there's more I could be saying. Yeah, maybe there are more deeper cuts that could be happening further away from kids, but I applaud you for the voluntary sacrifices that some of you have offered, indicating that you clearly want to be a meaningful part of the solution, furlough days. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for keeping our focus on our purpose, which is educating our youth.
Thank you, Kim. All right.
Joanne, I'm going to save you for item 8. Okay, great. All right, so we have before us approval of resolution 2018-19-16 regarding layoff of classified employees. The following recommended layoff of classified staffing results in a reduction of ongoing spending in the amount of $155,696. There are 6 positions that are impacted. Staff services, reduction of 1 FTE. In-house supervisor, reduction of 1 FTE. Registrar, reduction of 0.17 FTE from 12 months to 10 months. Accountant 1, reduction from 0.17 FTE, 12 months to 10 months. Assistant to superintendent, reduction 0.09 FTE, 12 months to 11 months. Lastly, assistant to Santa Ynez High principal, reduction 0.09 FTE, 12 months to 11 months. Okay. So, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion to approve resolution 2018-19 regarding layoff of classified employees. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
John?
I speak for myself, I'm going to guess that everybody else on the board shares my frustration, and that is we were elected to be on this board, not to just give out certificates of commendation, but to be able to struggle and come up with thoughtful resolutions to the difficult problems that come before us. And thank goodness that we have Scott, Corey, and Alicia who have been able to provide us with some good ideas, some good numbers. But frankly, I'm not sure that that's enough. Because when you look at the 5 of us as the Brain Trust, when you look at the wealth of our experiences in our adult lives, and when you remember that Superintendent Corey, I believe at the January meeting, had put a PowerPoint where the last slide, I've mentioned this to Scott before, said to the board, I'm going to be looking to you for direction. That's a huge responsibility to be putting on our 5 shoulders, especially when you realize what our educational background is, what our business background is. So Heather Blanchard was the one that mentioned that possibly we need a budget oversight committee. And I would certainly support that, assuming that it was a committee who was able to come up with thoughtful ideas that we would actually put into action, and it wouldn't just be a waste of their time. But frankly, I think what might even be something more that we should consider is, and this may sound ludicrous, spending money to save money, but I think we need to give thought to actually hiring a professional consultant who's walked down this path before with other school districts and is able to actually share with us in a non-emotional manner what are some ideas that can financially get us through the goalposts. Because what I don't like is being faced with having to make tough decisions and then having a pressing deadline to make it by. That's when you make mistakes. And I'm not saying that if we had a professional consultant that the decision that we're going to be voting on tonight would have been any different. It may have been the exact same, but at least I would have the confidence of knowing that I've got some professional there who's got the degree behind his name to give me some support. The decision that we're voting on tonight is the best that John Bakey's able to do, and I pray that it's the right decision.
Thank you, John. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? All right, Laura?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Let's go on to item 8, approval of resolution 2018-19-17 regarding furloughs of administrators and non-represented classified management, striking and certificated employees for the 2019-2020 school year. All right, Joanne King. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I could go back if I hear last vote. I have told you all what I think about these March budget cuts, maybe once too often. I would like to thank you for patiently listening to the community's feedback. Your willingness to engage the community while you consider your decision is appreciated. I applaud you for having the courage and wisdom to look back at some of your decisions and to reconsider them. I am thankful that you have spared many of the positions that have a great impact on the students. You obviously are taking the budget deficit seriously and feel a need to address it with some urgency. I do not agree that that urgency requires layoffs. On the matter of item 8, the resolution regarding furloughs, I find it problematic that this resolution only speaks of furloughs, but the savings expected includes the elimination of a special ed teaching position, a reduction in 1.2 full-time teaching positions, and the savings of a less senior hire for an English position. The background to the resolution refers to the savings as, quote, reductions in ongoing certificated spending that amounts to over $199,000. It is unclear if this savings even includes the furloughs. My reading of the background to this resolution makes me uneasy. I'm afraid that the way it is written makes it look like the administration's furlough days are merely token cuts made for the appearance that the administration is bearing some of the burden of this budget crisis. I have a few questions whose answers may ease this fear. How much does 5 days of the superintendent being furloughed save the district? How much do the administrators' furloughed days in total save the district? What is the reason for using furloughs for the administrative positions? Why not renegotiate administrative salaries? Furloughs imply one-time savings. Renegotiated reduced salaries are ongoing savings. The clearly stated need here is for cuts in ongoing expenditures. Both the superintendent and the principal have received substantial raises relatively recently. One at the beginning, I think, of last school year and the other at the beginning of this school year, just a few months before each year's March talks about the board's immediate need to address the budget deficit with layoffs occurs. This incongruency should be examined. I hope in your discussion of this resolution, these questions will be answered. I know you do not take these decisions lightly and are trying your best to do what is right for the district and the students. I hope you know how much the community wants to support the school district and the kids of this valley. I am very hopeful that the collaboration of the community with the school district will get us through the tough financial times ahead. Thank you.
Joanne, point of clarification, the reduction of 2 teaching positions is not a reduction of 2.
Oh, I understand. It's
Yeah.
1.2 to 1.
Correct.
It just seems
Those-
like a lot of words to say.
Right, but that is the net effect. It's going, they're still whole
Yes,
positions.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I do understand.
And the last admin raise was 16-17 on schedule.
Yes.
Admin has received some of the off schedule, but we have not done admin's raises since 16-17. Just for clarification, but the off schedule has, yes. No, those are off schedule amounts. in the amounts that others were receiving as well.
Guess I don't understand all this.
I'm happy to talk, happy to talk about that. Yes. Okay, this is a point of clarification on this. This is a total reduction in certificated spending, ongoing spending. There's no replacement of a special education teaching position due to a resignation that we are not backfilling. There is the reduction of 2 teaching positions from 1.2 FTE to 1.0 FTE. There will be an English teacher retirement backfill with less senior staff that will also result in a savings. And then there have been the furlough days for admin. The total of all of these is 191, 231.
Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2018-19-17?
I move to approve Resolution 2018-2019-17.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2018-19-17. Laura?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Discussion agenda item D1, public hearing and information discussion for the 2018-19 through 2020-2021 reasons for excess reserves. Alicia?
This is just a legal formality, just formally presenting to the public that we have excess reserves above and beyond the 4% state required minimum. We've discussed what those reserves are in the second interim presentation, so it's nothing new. It's just the formal requirement for reporting out those excess reserves.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. All right. E, board comments and correspondence. Anybody? John, that wouldn't surprise me.
I have a report I'd like to read. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a member of the Santa Ynez Valley Union High School District Board of Trustees, but not on behalf of the entire board. I shall make this statement available tonight and on my website, if anybody wants it. Ladies and gentlemen, both students and adults, this evening I would like to address you and discuss not regarding tonight's decision made by the board, but rather how we got here. I'm a fierce proponent of our First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech and freedom of peaceful assembly. Indeed, I abhor the recent trend of academic institutions to squash it. To those who took the time to write me, I thank you. Don't stop. To those who took the effort to approach the microphone, I thank you too. What has disappointed me is the amount of misinformation which permeated the public discussion. This has become apparent not just in reading letters, but listening to your comments at the public forums, and possibly most saddening, comments made on campus by staff and students. Please remember, I am a parent of a Santa Ynez Valley Union High School student. I am also a surgeon, so I ask rhetorically, when faced with a bloody crisis in the emergency room, am I able to be a more effective team leader with a calm demeanor or red-faced and angry? Again, though I defend everyone's right of free speech, speaking for myself, no one should believe that if the board's ruling tonight was as you desired, it was in any manner the result of angst or intimidation demonstrated toward us from the microphone. Threatening social media posts, such as this, and hurtful posters, such as this, we, the board, have strived to resolve this budget crisis in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. The students' voice in this matter has also been informative. What was revealing is the extent of misinformation and rampant rumoring among the student body. There have been teacher-led in-class discussions where some of this erroneous information has been fueled. Whether or not encouraged by adults, the threatened student boycott and protest was largely based on, again, misinformation. Possibly the best example of this has been the widely varying numbers cited as the balance of the district's reserve account, something I have heard students citing in excess of $10 million. Many have stated that certain teachers were going to be fired for purely vengeful reasons. I was even misquoted by the local newspaper. Fortunately, there is a video recording of the March 4th meeting on YouTube. So where was the simple fact-checking? During open mic, various students and parents lauded individual faculty for their value as a mentor to our youth. Indeed, mentorship is possibly the most virtuous character of a fine teacher. I ask each parent, staff, and teacher to reflect on how their reaction to this situation was seen by our students. Certainly across the campus, 100 staff members, role models all, reacted to this crisis in 100 different ways. For this particular learning moment, which of our staff do you see having best mentored our impressionable youth? Students learn not just from what they read, but from what they see. In later years, when one of our students is faced with an inevitable real-world crisis, such as an unsympathetic judge, an IRS audit, mistaken identity, criminal charges, or even racism, how one reacts during such times of personal crisis will impact the final outcome. Will the experiences of our high school students have prepared them for how best to deal with future turmoil? Now, as the outrageous Olive Grove Charter School drama heats up, I encourage teachers, students, and patrons to vigorously engage in conversation and learn about this very real financial crisis. However, I implore us all to know the facts first, then react. Now, as for all this misinformation, I am equally quick to point the blame finger at the administration and the board, and that includes me. We've done a poor job of effectively communicating the problem to you. Though the numbers are large and many, and the issues complex and possibly boring, better communication and dissemination from us could have gone far in preventing the misinformation and public outcry. This is the lesson I hope the administration and board can learn so as not to repeat the same mistake. I've begun discussions with Superintendent Corey, details of which I hope to make public next month, whereby going forward there will be more inclusion of faculty in all matters, budgetary and otherwise, which are brought before the board. If what I envision can be implemented, it is my hope that future staff and student unrest might be avoided, staff and student morale improved, and our school vision of, quote, graduating young men and women of excellent character might be advanced. Now, if you will forgive me, I shall close with this paraphrased verse from 2 Timothy 2:23-25, quote, avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, knowing that they generate strife. Do not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach in humility. End of quote, and I thank you.
John. All right. Before we move on, board matters, just a reminder everybody that our next board meeting is April 16th. All right. And then also Saturday is the Pirate Garage Car Show. Hope everybody, 9 to 2, hope everybody makes it. John, I think you have a car in that, right? Okay, cool. So with that, I want to we're going to go into closed session. And yeah, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. This has to deal with Olive Grove. All right, and then we will come out of closed session. Thank you very much, everybody.